resolution, emergency amendments to the judiciary law. We have someone from the LRO, Lynn Fitzmeyer.
Good morning.
Morning.
These emergency amendments to the judiciary are being requested to include specific bachelor degree requirements for the chief judge positions in the law.
Lynn, could you?
Oh, sorry.
Closer to the mic.
There was some research done, and it was discovered that there was an inadvertent omission in the judiciary law when it was adopted for the specific bachelor degree requirements under the chief judge positions in the law. The law requires specific bachelor degree requirements, specific fields of study under the bachelor degrees for the non-chief judge positions, but for the chief judge positions, those requirements are not in the law. So when they were preparing during the transition period for the upcoming election, it was discovered that these requirements were not in the law. So they're asking for emergency adoption of the amendments so that we can include those fields of study for the upcoming election for all the judge positions, not just the non-chief judge positions.
I guess I'll just make a motion to adopt the emergency amendments of the BC resolution to adopt the emergency amendments to the judiciary law.
A motion by Brandon Stevens. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by David Jordan. Discussion. Michelle.
Yes, sir.
And then Vince. Go ahead, Michelle.
In regards to the
Motion to adopt.
okay, so the that is really loud. Did you have questions for me in regards to this, or
Oh, you sat down. I thought you had something.
I was just
vital
on the
to-
phone, so I'm sorry I'm late.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
So if we don't do this emergency amendment, we could have a situation whereby all the judges on the new court would have a college education on a determined field of study, but we could wind up with a chief judge who does not have any such requirements.
That is correct. What we found was that the list that the General Tribal Council wanted for specific areas of studies was specified under non-chief judges, but for some reason we failed to include it under the non-chief judges. And it was pretty clear that General Tribal Council's intent was that if there was a bachelor's degree, it should be in one of those fields of study. And so because elections are coming up so soon, that is why we're asking for this amendment. Because potentially someone could run for chief judge with a bachelor's degree in art history or in art or in zoology, which is not listed here. And they could say, well, you're not eligible. And they could clearly make the argument, if this is not in here, and say, it doesn't specify. It just says I have to have a bachelor's degree and 3 years of experience as a judge. I have that. It doesn't matter what my bachelor's degree is in. So that's the purpose of this emergency amendment.
And eventually, in a year, I think 6 months, it would have to go back to GTC.
Right, I believe it was Ms. Danforth, Melinda Danforth's plan to get it going forward so that it would be to GTC in July, I think it was, right? Okay.
Okay.
Right, because this is for this current election, because this is the first time that these judges would be elected.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there further questions?
Mr. Chairman, can we add social work to sociology, put sociology / social work onto the list of bachelor's degrees? It's under letter I. I think it's just as relevant as journalism, which is on the list, or philosophy, which is on the list.
And sociology and social work are very similar.
But they're not the same.
They're not the same, but they're
So I
similar.
would like it
Right.
to be added,
No, right.
please. Thank you.
Would that be considered an emergency? You're doing emergency legislation. Obviously, there was when we adopted it, that this was an oversight, everything else, everybody else had a college degree requirement and a certain field of study. Didn't cover it under judiciary, but it seems that that would be an emergency. But I don't know about adding sociology. I don't
All
know.
these other ones are being added. There's like,
But those were all
15 of
discussed.
them.
Yeah, but
Those are all
those were all
discussed at the
discussed by
meeting.
GTC.
I believe this was discussed as well.
It was discussed and accepted by GTC.
It wasn't,
I don't know, I don't see it
Wasn't
as an
added.
emergency, I don't know the rest of you. We can add it as an amendment to the motion, and it'll be up to the business committee.
And we could certainly propose that in July when this is taken to the GTC, so that for the next round of elections, that would be included. But
And that would be the
Yes.
proper place to add it, would be at the GTC, because they're the ones that already approved.
Yeah, they
these.
already
Just
approved
said they
the
weren't
list, yeah.
put in it under this category, and that's,
Do
So,
we have the minutes that reflect that meeting?
at the GTC, I don't.
We have approved minutes to substantiate that?
I just don't see it as an emergency, that part of it. It's up to the business committee. Tina, I believe, is making a motion for an amendment,
So moved.
so it's up.
Is there a
Is there a
second?
second?
Support.
Supported by Vince Della Rosa. Discussion on the amendment. Mhm.
No, there's been controversy about the list. We've done our best to frame a list that's reasonable. I don't think the treasurer's request is unreasonable at all. So I use a reasonable test really here. It's not, she's not going so far outside the boundaries to say it's specious to even think that that's reasonable. I think your request is reasonable. I think it's worthy.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment to add sociology to the list of
Social work.
Social work.
social work? Okay.
As long as it goes to the final approval at the GTC.
my only question is just, I think we made the amendments here, and we have the list from the General Tribal Council, that there is a list that they approved from General Tribal Council, and it's not on the list. So putting the requirements that should be in there already is what we should do, and then we can propose any new additions that may come up, because there may be other ones, and that needs to go to General Tribal Council first. This gets adopted in
Now.
now.
On an emergency basis.
emergency
Temporary
basis.
emergency basis. So, yeah, it could change when we finally get the minutes and we finally get back to the final amendment
So we
versus
propose
an
that.
emergency amendment.
So we propose that to General Tribal Council in the proper fashion at that point.
But currently, it's my understanding that, well, I don't see it as an emergency, adding social work. Maybe the business committee does. It'll be up to the business committee. Patty.
I think for clarification that the emergency amendments today are to add into the law those things that GTC asked us or voted to have in the law, but those things were inadvertently not included in the original law. So the emergency is to make sure that what GTC wanted is in the law. Now, if we want to change what GTC wanted by adding others, that's a different conversation, and that didn't get vetted through the LOC process. I think if you want to change and add more, take it back through the LOC process, but then that will delay the process. So I think going forward, bring it to GTC as the councilman and the chairman are recommending is my position.
So on the amendment, you don't support,
No, I don't, it's,
that's a statement.
yeah, it's a
So
petty
we'll vote now.
kind of thing.
All those in favor of the amendment to add social work as one of the qualifications for chief judge? And I guess all the positions, right?
I believe the amendment is specific to the chief judicial officer section of the policy or law, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to table until Councilwoman Melinda Danforth arrives so that she can explain what occurred in order to get us to this point. She should be here at 11. She's also got to talk to us about another judiciary action that we need to consider. And so then she can educate us about the process that she, through the LOC process, went through. So I'm motion to table.
And I believe a motion to table takes precedence.
There's got to be a second, though.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by David Jordan. All those in favor of tabling this item, the amendment, and of course the motion until
The councilwoman arrives.
Councilwoman Melinda Danforth arrives, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
we'll do a hand count.
Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman,
it
call
was-
for the question.
We'll do a hand count.
I said yes.
Oppose.
Oppose.
Yes, yes, opposed,
Opposed.
opposed.
So it failed. So
Fails.
that takes
Motion
us to the
table
vote.
fails. Vince?
I want to make a statement on that. The Secretary had suggested that we need to be educated on what's going on here. I've been involved in these legislative processes and at the GTC meeting. I don't need an education on what's going on here. We've been elected to use reasonable standards of thought process as it relates to legislation that we're adopting. This is a simple request. It's not very complicated. It's not far outside the boundaries of what we're doing anyway. This is not an unreasonable request by the treasurer.
Okay.
Call for the question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we are going to vote on the amendment. Patty, could you read the amendment?
The motion was by Brandon Stevens, seconded by David Jordan. Or, I'm sorry, on the amendment. Motion by Tina Danforth, seconded by Vince De La Rosa to add social work.
Not sociology anymore.
No, I
No,
would
it
say
was-
put / social work on letter I. Letter I reads sociology, and I would like to add / social work.
Okay, we're going to vote on the amendment. And I think we'll do a hand count again, because I think it's going to be close. You support the amendment, Patty?
No.
David?
Abstain.
Vince?
Mr. Chair, support.
Support.
Opposed.
I do believe we have
It's a tie.
And I'm going to, I don't support the amendment. It's not an emergency. It's not part of what was introduced to General Tribal Council in any way when they passed the judiciary.
Do you
I
have the
do
minutes
believe
to
it would-
reflect that?
I would suggest it would go back to the LOC, but
That'll take us
this
to the main.
amendment has failed. We'll vote on the main motion. Patty, could you
Is-
read the main motion?
Motion was by Brandon Stevens, seconded by David Jordan to adopt the emergency amendments.
All those in favor? I think we'll do a hand count again. Patty?
Yes.
Yes.
Support.
Oppose.
Support.
Okay, motion carries 4, and 1 against.
Mr. Chairman, I oppose because in the legal summary or statement of fact, it says that the error was made aware by the judicial transition team, and it doesn't say it was made by anyone else, that the error was found at that point. And I also oppose because I think, we have to live with what we've done, and if we didn't catch it then, catching it now at the last hour doesn't help the process. And the other thing I'm opposing is because I have asked several times for minutes to be ratified, to be submitted to this body, so that when we make decisions, we have the minutes to fall back on. And we continually have General Tribal Council meeting minutes provided very late in the season, in the year, in the month. And this is the reason why we need minutes, not action reports, minutes. So thank you. That's my statement for the record.
Thank you, Tina. Brandon?
We wouldn't even have to have the discussion because I could read the minutes and say, okay, that's what was said.
Or if you would,
Thank you.
And for the record, because maybe we don't have the minutes, because this was not the topic of discussion today, we could not make a decision on that either way. So I think that's why we need to stay forward and with the request forward and not to add any additional requests onto it because they weren't vetted, because the minutes weren't available.
And, Mr. Chairman?
For the record, Patty.
Yeah, this process is vetted through the LOC process, and it's probably highly unlikely that anybody else attended those meetings except for the 5 people who are on the LOC. So for persons who criticize the process, it's most likely because they didn't attend the process.
Nobody's criticizing the process. We're asking for backup.
Okay, for the record, statements have been made. Next